You boys be quiet down there!
Welcome back to PC-88 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-88, the most popular Japanese PC series of the 1980s. Today we're looking at a unique action RPG I recently added to my collection, the Story of Melroon, also known simply as Melroon, released in 1989 by a company called DB Soft. While doing my research before making this video, what struck me most is how fondly remembered this game seems to be among those who played it. Will the game live up to those fond memories, or are these old-time Japanese gamers just wearing rose-tinted nostalgia goggles? Only one way to find out. So here's the game. The cover art was drawn by Sayori Abe, who you might recognize from the artwork in a couple other games. She's actually most well known for drawing children's educational comics. Inside, first of all, my copy of the game is unfortunately missing the manual, but does have the registration card. Gee, thanks previous owner. Luckily the map is still here, since it becomes quite useful while playing the game, as you'll see later. The previous owner also seems to have used the included user disc sticker to make this user disc, and the disc sleeve looks like it was used for Psychic War Disc 1. I'll bet they had a pirated copy, since that game is pretty rare. Last of all, the floppy disks are stored in one of those horrible vinyl things attached to the inside of the case, similar to Telenet's games. If I can manage to get these out of here, you can see that the game is stored on 4 floppy disks. To start the game, we simply insert Disk A, the system disk, in Drive 1. There's some nice happy music on the title screen. Although Melroon doesn't use the soundboard too, the game is generally pleasant sounding. It's not a soundtrack I would want to listen to outside the game or anything, but there are quite a few nice tracks. The history of the world of Melroon told here is quite long and not very relevant to the main story, so let's just start a new game. We'll enter a name for our hero, and then we're asked to add Disk B in Drive 2. As the narrator explains, it may be somewhere in the Pacific, or maybe the Indian Ocean. Who knows? But if you remember perhaps building a secret fort in the forest as a child with your friends, that's the sort of fun, special place that is the land of Melroon. Currently the king of Melroon is in a slight conundrum. The princess has turned 19 and the time has come for her to marry. But somehow almost every man in Melroon is either married or engaged, leaving only 2 eligible bachelors. You, the protagonist, and your arch-rival, Jim Suspender. Ooh, how I hate him, with his fancy suspenders and everything. Anyway, the king asks you to seek out the 7 sacred treasures of Melroon. Whoever manages to find them will marry the princess and become the new king. Okay, so now we can move. The system menu doesn't have much. I'll change the message speed to high, but it doesn't make a lot of difference. I'll leave the sound effects at full volume and the music turned on. Another option I saw right away in the main menu is the Memories function. I figured this is how you save your game, but I was wrong. The king gives us sort of an immediate lesson on how to use the Memories system in this game. He asks the hero to bring him a glass of water, and the game gives us a flashing exclamation point and blue text indicating we just got a new memory. The king wants water. It appears in our first memory slot in the menu. We can then go to the royal kitchen, and whereas in most games you would just talk to the maid here and she would give you the water, in Melroon you have to open the Memories menu while you're here in the kitchen and select The King Wants Water. The maid then gives a glass of water, which the hero carries back on his head. Give it to the king, and what do we get?
I got a rock.
But this is no ordinary rock. The king explains that it will magically reappear back in the hero's hand no matter how far he throws it. Wow, that's probably the first time I've ever seen a game try to explain an unlimited projectile weapon. So we leave the castle and enter the overhead view, which is the main travel and combat perspective for the game. Along the way, we'll find a cave with a puzzle to solve inside. So Melroon has at least 3 different gameplay modes: side view, overhead view, puzzle view, and sometimes even a weird hybrid side view where you can move up and down. So about these puzzles, which the game calls gold mines, they're much harder than they look. You can't jump or fall, and you can only push single stones when you're able to get right up next to them. How can I possibly get that pile of gold? Now look at this second puzzle. We need 4 stones in order to fill in this gap and get to the gold, yet there are only 3, so obviously this puzzle is impossible. Well, things suddenly become a lot easier once you realize you can walk over small gaps between the stones. The main strategy behind these puzzles is dropping the blocks from above so that they land in just the right places. With some practice, I like to think I got pretty good at solving these puzzles over time. But also remember that once you get the gold, you still need to get out.
I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
There are some extremely challenging puzzles near the end of the game that took me quite a while to figure out. Luckily, you can quickly choose to retry or give up on the puzzles at any time. Solving them is the main way you can earn money called poly. The enemies also occasionally drop some poly, but this alone will never be enough. You've got to do the puzzles. So where are we going to spend all this money? The towns have a number of shops and houses to visit. One innovative aspect of Melroon for the time is that there are supposedly over 130 unique characters, each of them with a name. The dialogue is always a bit funny and quirky, adding to the unique personality of Melroon. Even Jim Suspender's sister has a shop in the first town, but since you're her brother's arch-rival, she refuses to help you and kicks you out. Damn you, Suspender! Even your sister is against me. Each town also has a church. This is where you can create a user disk and save your game. When creating a user disk, we're asked to insert a blank disk in drive 1, and then wait for the format and creation process to finish. Alternatively, you can just save to the original system disk if you want. Of course, I'm not a fan of doing this, but the advantage is that then you don't need to change disks when you save. Unlike in many other games, Melroon's user disk doesn't work as a copy of the system disk, and you'll have to switch disks back and forth every time you save to the user disk. It also only holds one game save. An additional function of the churches is clearing your old unneeded memories so that you can store new ones. This is accomplished by dropping a 16-ton anvil on the hero's head, the safest and most efficient way to forget anything. The king needed water? Duh, what's water? Before leaving town, we can buy a bow and arrow, so much for that crummy rock the king gave us. The combat in Melroon is not very challenging. I found it very easy to avoid getting hit. The enemies also occasionally drop hearts to refill your power, which is your HP, so it's generally pretty easy to stay alive. One thing you might want to keep an eye on, though, is how much food you have left. Don't you just love games where you need to carry food? Yeah, neither do I, but it's generally not too bad in this game. Each time you stay at the inn in town, not only is your power refilled, but your food also gets restored to the maximum of 100. I figured out later that since I always have plenty of power, it's cheaper to just skip the inn and grab a bite to eat instead. Hey look, enjoy, caca! In any case, just make sure to fill up on food every time you stop at a town, cause it's always gradually running out. If you lose power, you can also stop and let it gradually refill like in the East series, but your food will run out more quickly than usual while doing this. So what else is in this HUD? You level and gain experience the same as in other action RPGs. Leveling up won't improve your attack, but it will increase your power max and the number of memories you can store at a time. This shield meter is only used when you buy a shield or armor in town. It will allow you to take a certain number of hits without losing any power. I never really found this necessary until maybe the final section of the game. This item box shows which items you currently have equipped. There are actually only 4 equipment slots here: body, head, weapon, and 1 additional item. Finally, let's move back up to the clock here. Melroon has a day and night cycle, so know that darkness isn't my RGB upscaler screwing up, it's just nighttime. The clock moves faster than real time, but still it's a little annoying that the shops are only open from 10 AM to 7 PM. Later in the game, one of the treasures will allow you to manipulate time, making this less of an issue. On the first island, this girl is actually a frog who has been transformed into a human by her mother as a punishment. Oh, that's terrible. She teaches you the magic words to open the door to her mother's cave, so that you can go talk to her mother. Time for that memory system again. There, the door's open. The mother frog is willing to change her daughter back, but has mistakenly swallowed her magic wand. She would ask you to go inside her stomach to retrieve it, but doesn't know how you'll get back out. You need to go get this crazy apple-picking hat with a retractable hand at the apple orchard elsewhere on the island. Then the mother frog will swallow you and you can get the wand and get out like this. As a reward, she gives you the wand and also the first of the 7 treasures of Melroon. It's a sound recording device that will come in handy at certain points in the adventure. And the wand is the most powerful weapon so far. It's like the fire weapon in Contra, except a lot more crazy and unpredictable. I generally like it, but it's sometimes hard to make sure it actually hits the enemies. Then we can board a boat to the next island. The boats in this game only leave at a certain time each day, which again can be a little inconvenient. The hero's adventure will take him across all 7 islands of Melroon, where each of the 7 treasures is hidden. It's cool that each island not only has its own overhead BGM, but even its own town BGM, so the music in Melroon is constantly changing and never gets old. On the second island, we get the second treasure from this clock guy, the aforementioned time manipulation device. But don't forget, you're not the only one looking for these treasures. Who should you meet at the entrance to the cave for the third treasure? Is that Suspender! He never has much success getting the treasures though. Here he quickly runs back out of the cave with a fish on his head. He must have fallen victim to these jumping fish in the cave. There's only one way old Jim is going to get any of the treasures, and that's through underhanded means. Sometimes when you enter a town, you will randomly encounter him and he'll take some of your treasures. Damn you, Suspender! You come back with my treasure, right now! When this happens, you're both trapped in town until you eventually catch him and reclaim what's rightfully yours. But as far as the regular game progression goes, I think you know the drill. Get the thing, bring it to the guy, get the other thing from him, then bring that to some other place. Some of the things you get will be the 7 treasures of Melroon. The concept is simple, but so much of this game is near impossible to figure out on one's own. I can say with confidence that I never would have finished this game without a walkthrough. Luckily, there are a couple of decent ones in Japanese that proved to be indispensable throughout my quest. One thing that might not be obvious otherwise is that you often have to return to the previous islands in order to get to the next ones, rather than just following a linear path around them. And once you've obtained the hook hat, returning to the first island will allow you to meet your closest ally, a monkey named Etero, who always follows you around and throws bananas behind him. This is a great complement to your main attack. From the first island, you can travel to the Snowy Island and meet my favorite of the treasure keepers, Rock and Rock. Hey boy, those weird mice up there are my backup band, so don't touch or go bringing a cat in here or anything. A cat? What am I supposed to do, find a cat who follows me around like my monkey? I never would have figured this out without a walkthrough. You have to go all the way back to the king's castle from the beginning of the game and record the sound of this cat using the first treasure. Oh my god! Hey boy! What have you done? Those mice and their music was the only thing allowing me to dance and stay warm. You're gonna have to give me that hand warmer you have and I'll give you the next treasure. And he's not kidding about the cold. The snowy island he lives on requires you to have a heavy coat equipped to survive for more than a few seconds. Similarly, the volcanic island requires a helmet, and the rainy island requires an umbrella hat. What the hell? The rain kills me? Incidentally, since the fighting in this game is so easy, these near-instant deaths due to not having the right equipment is the only way I ever saw the game over screen. Suspender. But getting game over is far from the worst thing that can happen to you in this game. Despite how well made this game seems overall, it's surprisingly easy to permanently screw up your adventure and unwittingly save yourself into a state where it's no longer possible to progress. The easiest way this can happen is by hearing an important new memory when you don't have any open memory slots left. The easy way that could have fixed this is by allowing you to go to the church and open some slots before going back to learn the memory again. But nope, can't do that. Memories are only given once. If you don't have an open slot, tough luck. Hope you didn't save your game yet, cause now your adventure is unbeatable. Better load and try again. The only exception to this is in this town where all the couples are quarreling and you need to play telephone using the memory system to help get the couples back together. If you screw it up, then mercifully there's an option to reset the whole thing and restart the quarreling couples event from the beginning. By the way, can you guess who it was who turned all the couples against each other in the first place? Yep, Suspender. But the memory system is not the only way you can permanently screw up your game. There's a very useful item you can obtain that allows you to travel instantly between all the islands you've previously visited. The main walkthrough I was using says obtaining this is optional, but I think I found a part near the end where this item is actually required, and if you didn't get it earlier, there's no way to go back and get it by this point. So yeah, I myself had been living on the edge using only one user disc, despite my own warnings I've made in previous videos. After spending days progressing through the game, I found myself at a dead end, and the reality slowly set in that my game was now impossible to finish. So I rage quit for a few days and tried to decide if I wanted to make a video about this game without finishing it. I was really angry at this game for wasting my time. My modern gaming sensibilities had me wondering, why on earth would a game developer sabotage their own game and punish a player who had given all their time, just to never allow them to finish it? But after a few days, something strange happened. I found myself remembering the fun gameplay and the catchy music and had the urge to play the game again, even if I had to start all over again from the beginning. You have to remember that back in the 80s, many developers expected that most players would never finish their games. Forcing the player to start over again from the beginning was always a valid option, though one might argue that truly well-made games from the 80s never forced the player to do this. For whatever reason though, I just couldn't stay angry at this game. There was just too much to like about it. My second playthrough was like a speed run, where I utilized all my wisdom from my first attempt in addition to the walkthroughs. I also of course made sure to create multiple user discs and stagger my saves, just in case. This time I managed to get all 7 treasures and return with them to the king. It looks like it's happily ever after. But wait a minute, Suspender? That's not one of the 7 treasures, that's the forbidden chest that must never be opened. Now the ancient Dark Lord of Melroon has been revived and he's kidnapped the princess. Wow, you've really done it this time, Suspender. This is what the walkthroughs refer to as the second part of the game. The BGM is all different, and new much more difficult enemies have been added to all of the islands. Some of these are so fast and hard to avoid, the fighting in this game almost becomes kinda hard. Almost. Anyway, the goal is to travel back to each of these big silly looking characters on each island and defeat them. They've all been temporarily turned evil by the Dark Lord. No, not my man Rockin' Rock.
Yep, here's your problem. Someone set this thing to evil.
Defeating each of them will add one part of the secret password to your memories menu, and the entire password will allow you to travel to the Dark Lord's castle. Uh-oh, looks like no monkeys allowed. The castle is a simple maze where you need to destroy 3 gems before confronting the Dark Lord. Looks like some kind of silly kids cartoon villain. The second phase is much more threatening and is obviously inspired by the xenomorphs from the Alien movies. I finished him on my first try, cause like I said, the battles in this game are seldom difficult. Finally, the hero has saved his naked princess. They are married, he becomes king, and peace has finally returned to Melroon. Or has it? Ooh, Suspender. The end credits contain some kind of funny messages if you like reading Japanese written entirely in Roman characters. And on the final screen, you're shown how many days in the day-night cycle it took you to finish the game. 18 days seems pretty good to me. Clearly they were hoping people would replay the game and try to beat their friend's fastest playthrough. And that's the kind of game I think they intended Melroon to be. Something you can start over and enjoy messing around in again and again, even if you can't beat it. In fact, I'd say it's damn near impossible to figure everything out on your own, and there was never any sort of guidebook released as far as I can tell. It reminds me of the kind of game where you would trade hints and secrets with your friends on the playground at school, and that's why I think it's actually kind of unfortunate that Melroon was never released on a system that everyone had, like the Famicom. I could see this being an NES classic had it ever been ported, but unfortunately Melroon was only for PCs, and not that many people owned a PC back then. The only other PC it was even ported to was the PC-88. As you might imagine, it's one of those quick and dirty PC-98 ports like we've seen many times on PC-88 Paradise. The only major advantage is that the PC-98 version fits on just 2 floppy disks instead of 4, due to the higher disk capacity. One unfortunate issue is that the game uses CPU cycles for the timing, so it won't run at the correct speed on a newer PC-98 model like mine. I tried the CPU speed switch, but found I was only able to select between a little too fast or a little too slow. Of course, this shouldn't be counted against the game since it was never intended to be run on a system this new, but it may be an issue for PC-98 owners attempting to run it on real hardware today. The way I first learned about Melroon was actually through this PC-88 demo CD-ROM I've shown previously in this series. After playing a bit of the demo, I decided to play the full packaged version of the game. But after finishing it, I decided to test just how much of the game is actually contained in the demo. Turns out not much. If you try to travel to the second island, it shows the boat animation but then just dumps you back where you got on the first island. So only the first island is here. There are also some other minor differences. The game dumps you straight in, skipping the title screen and even the intro in the King's Throne Room. There are fade-in transitions when the BGM changes, which I don't like since you can't hear the beginnings of the music. The gold also weirdly jerks back and forth on the puzzle screens, leading me to believe this is probably based on an early build, which would make sense since this demo disc was released the same year as the full game. In this video series, I've often described games as being unique and innovative for their time, or having quote-unquote a lot of great ideas. But with Melroon, I think the key word is personality. The game just oozes personality. The style is certainly reminiscent of classics like River City Ransom or Earthbound, but there's just something warm and welcoming about the world of Melroon, to the point that I just couldn't stay mad at the game. Even our old friend Jim Suspender means well. He always makes sure to ask the hero how he's been, and gives tips on how to avoid the obstacles he's fallen victim to. So when you think back to that space under the jungle gym at school, the tent you built under your parents' coffee table, or that empty lot in the neighborhood where you used to play, you may have just found yourself in a place like Melroon. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-88 Paradise, and a special thanks to patrons for their support. If you know anyone else who would be interested in the land of Melroon or the PC-88, then please be sure to share this video with them. I'll see you again next time for another adventure in another far-off land.